Taric is not a great champion right now. I think he's like middle of the pack. But the thing about that is, what I like to tell people is, in lower ranks, your champion picks don't matter as much. The reason I say this is because, let's say you're playing a challenger game, right? Challenger is the top 200 players of the region.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's around the same skill set. So when it comes to games like that, the thing that's going to set one player over the top of the other, like that's going to give them that little bit of an edge, is the power picks, right? If somebody's playing Irelia and the other person's playing full AD Soraka, the Irelia is going to win, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but you get the point. In lower ranks, the skill level is a little bit more spread out. There's a ton of players. Silver is actually the most populated rank in all of League of Legends. The majority of players are in Silver, so you're going to see a lot of different skill sets in Silver and in all lower ranks. So when it comes to these games, instead of picking power picks, my recommendation is to play comfort picks, right? If Taric is your most played champion in the champion that you feel the most comfortable on, even if he's a middle of the pack champion, that is the champion that I would recommend you playing, right? So I do think it's good that you are having a main champion. The one piece of advice that I would give you, though, is try to play 2 or 3 champions.
Yes.
And it seems like
I side main Soraka. Actually, I've been playing Soraka a lot more, just because I can early lane bully so well with her, so we can get ahead usually. It just depends on what the other team picks. If I get a chance to see what they're going with, if I see that they got like a lot of poke or somebody that's going to give Taric a hard time, I'll go with Soraka. If it's somebody that's got a lot of poke, but if they tend to like melt Soraka, then I might go with like a Bard, just so I can have a lot of movement.
okay.
Like I just learned Bard the other night though, so he's new. He's a lot of fun, but I main Taric and Soraka, and then occasionally I'll throw in like a Janna or Sona.
Okay. So yeah, I think 2 or 3 champions would be ideal. I don't think one tricking a champion is ever a good idea. But you have 157 games on Taric, and then your next most played is only 23. So the fact that you are learning new champions is good. So yeah, I would definitely focus on that. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about here is going to be everything that you should have prepared ahead of the game, right? I don't know if you saw my video. Came out with a video a few days ago that was like how to win a game within the first 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
And it's all these things that are important things that you can do that'll put you in the best situation possible before you even get onto the Rift, right? And one of those things is going to be runes, having the correct runes, and then build path, but that is something that even adapts later on in the game, but you can't have an ideal build heading into the game. So I'm actually going to pull up a website right here. This is not sponsored at all. I was sponsored by u.gg. I'm not at all anymore, but I'm just showing you this because I actually think that this is a really helpful website here.
Yeah, that's what I normally build. I looked at that game and the first thing I looked at was the runes. I messed up and forgot to change my runes before I went to that game. So I had runes set up for Soraka even though I played Taric. That's why Ari's on him.
All right, let's see if it's exactly the same though.
I usually go with the resolve tree with secondary being inspiration. I don't go boots often though.
I'm actually okay with going biscuit delivery just because in my experience playing Taric, I run into a lot of mana issues myself. And this is not only just going to provide more sustain, but it actually does increase your mana. I don't know if everybody pays attention to that. But biscuit delivery doesn't just give you like some extra sustain. Does every time you use one of these, it's going to increase your mana pool by 40. So it is a good option. Everything here looks good. I would recommend taking Ignite. It seems like you are almost every single time going Exhaust. Exhaust works. My personal preference is Ignite. I like to play aggressive. I like to snowball games. So that's going to be my piece of advice there. As for your build, there's a lot of things that are throwing me off in your build. I think I see, there's a Frozen Heart here. There's a Spirit Visage here. But we'll talk about that more in-game because builds can vary from one game to another.
I usually, just to give you background on that too, I typically rush. It all depends again on who I'm laning against. If it's an all AD team, I'll rush Frozen Heart just because the defense on it's just amazing. But if it's like a Vel'Koz Jhin where I've got like AP and a lot of poke and also AD, then I'll go with Zeke's. If it's all AP, I'll go. What's that?
I said or two because there's
Yeah,
this gaming.
I don't know what I was doing there. I don't know what was going on. I make mistakes sometimes. I do. That's the thing too with being a student and only having so little time behind the game. Like a lot of people I know that are pretty good, they've been playing the game for years. I don't have that, so I do sometimes make little silly mistakes, and I'm trying to nail those down. But yeah, I tip my typical Taric build. Honestly, it used to always be to rush Frozen Heart and then go with Spirit, and that way I'd have defense, MR, and sustain. But I've noticed it takes a little too long in the early feigning or laning phase. So what I'm doing now, per your advice actually from your videos, is I'm trying to build Knight's Helm more. That way I can also beef up my ADC a little bit since they get extra armor.
So when it comes to Frozen Heart, it's one item that I usually say you never want to buy a support, just because it does take so long to build. And you mentioned earlier that you only build against full AD compositions, and that I understand. There's even pro players that will build Frozen Heart first item if they're up against a full AD composition. They had a Morgana on the enemy team in this game, so I think that was Morgana support though, right?
I think she was mid, maybe in that.
Oh, mid. If that's a Morgana mid, I probably wouldn't have gone Frozen Heart. If that was a Morgana support, she's not going to be able to provide as much damage. So then Frozen Heart would have been okay here. But yeah, that's typically an item that I would advise to stay away from. Another thing that you mentioned was the fact that you are a student, you're busy.
Student of the game, not
student of the game.
Student.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Well, you're busy. You're a busy man, right? And in order to be really, really good at League of Legends, you do have to invest in a lot of games. If you think about it, all the best of the best players have been playing this game since beta or season 3-ish, right? And they've put quite a lot of games in. They've put thousands and thousands of games. And I'm not saying that thousands of games are necessary in order to be great at this game. But I'm looking here. You have 60 wins, 79 losses. So you don't have a ton of games on the season. Me personally, I only have like 600 games on the season. And I say only because it's 1,400 less than what I did last season. But even then, I think that was like a good amount, right? So if you are looking to improve, to be like super, super good, you have to be able to play a lot of games. I'm just going to show you an extreme example here. Okay. And the reason that he plays so many games is because he's a streamer. But I mean, just an example, look how many games Antibot has on the season. 1,954 wins, 1,901 losses. So this is a very, very extreme example, right? He streams for a living, so that's the reason he's playing so much. But it does show like a big difference in how sometimes just playing a lot of games does allow you to be better at the game. So yeah, the obvious thing that we're already looking at here is the Aerie, but you already mentioned that was just a mistake that you were playing on Soraka.
Yeah, previously. That's unfortunate.
Okay, so if you've watched any of my previous coaching sessions, then you know that there are 3 questions that I like to ask myself at the start of every single game. Those questions are, how do I want to play the lane phase? What is my role on the team? And what is my team's win condition? Okay, so the first question that is going to come into play out of all of those is the lane phase, obviously. Taric is kind of a weird pick, I would say, at least in the lane phase specifically. He has potential to make plays. He has potential to peel, but overall his lane phase is somewhat lackluster. For the most part, Taric is a champion that really shines in the mid to late game. His ultimate is one of the strongest ultimates out of all support champions. It's just an absolute game changer when it comes to team fighting, keeping his team alive.
Yep.
So in this lane phase specifically, I'm expecting you guys to go even more than anything. Just because Miss Fortune, she can poke a little bit with her E. She can hopefully poke a little bit with her Q if she's able to bounce that off of minions. Braum is kind of in the same situation as Taric, meaning that he's not super oppressive and he's not super defensive. Excuse me. He can do a little bit of everything, but for the most part, he's better in team fights as well. And then Ashe is going to be the same thing as Miss Fortune, just poking here and there. So for the most part, I'm expecting kind of a mirror matchup here, and that's why I'm expecting it to go even. As for your role on the team and your team's win condition, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. All right. So the first thing that I always like to tell people as far as like what they can do to be productive in the start of the game is always being active. You are a little bit late out of base. You're kind of standing here. You're on the right page, but you're not quite there as far as what I would love to see from you. What I would love to see is for you to, as soon as the game starts, run out of base. Because as I preach so often, the early stages of the game are often the most important, just because in solo queue people have very weak mentalities, right? People like to grief, people like to int, people like to open mid, they like to give up. And that's because they fall behind early, they get discouraged, they get upset, whatever it is, and the game can often snowball just from that. So I think in the first few minutes, you need to do everything in your power just to make sure that your team is either going even or ahead. So in order to go ahead, sometimes you might want to look for an invade, and if you're just looking to go even, you usually want to stand at 1 of 5 points. Those 5 points are here, so like the top laner could stand here, the jungler could stand here, the mid laner could stand here, support could stand here, and ADC can stand here. If you stand in those 5 spots, there's no way that you can possibly get invaded on because you are seeing every single entry point. So I would like to see you be slightly more active. You did get out of base somewhat fast. You were in base for just a few seconds, but now you're just standing here, right? Mm-hmm. Standing here is something that most people do. It's a common mistake. But if you are standing here, you don't actually have fog or a vision of this area. The only reason you have vision of this area right now is because Sejuani's here. But easily the enemy team could have, let's say, Misfortune wasn't standing here. They could have gone around, snuck around this corner, boom, kill you. Or they could have hugged this wall, gone this direction, hugged this wall, boom, you're dead, right? There's a lot of ways that you can die here because you're not being as productive as possible.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Okay, so you guys leech. The enemy team has to leech as well. So again, as I had already planned, this is already an even lane. I'm expecting to go even for the most part. Let's see how you handle the level 2 power spike now, though, because that is something that I preach quite often. Not a bad trade there. You did land the E, and I like actually the fact that you didn't go for the auto. So there's a lot of problems with champion abilities that I see. For example, a lot of people, whenever they land the Lee Sin Q, they feel like they're obligated to use the second half of the Q.
Yeah.
If a Thresh lands the first half of the Q, they feel like they're obligated to use the second half, right? When it comes to Taric, I see a lot of people, as soon as they land their E, they feel obligated to auto because it does have that passive where you get 2 enhanced auto attacks, right?
Yes.
So I like the fact that you went up here, you did land the E, but then you didn't decide to go for the auto attacks. If you did go for the auto attacks, you would have been hit with the Braum Q, then you're slowed and you have to walk all the way back here. Ashe is going to be autoing you the whole time, and you probably would have lost that trade. So pretty smart of you right there. I did like to see that.
I'm just trying to tilt them here.
So you're playing Taric, right? So you have Relic Shield. When it comes to the Relic Shield, what I like to say is use it on the second wave if possible, but settle for using it on the first wave if you have to, right? So an example here is, in this lane, this is a pretty passive lane, Taric Braum, not too much excitement. So in a situation like this, you should feel free, you should be able to at least, at the second wave, go up and auto the minions, proc your Relic Shield, pretty safely, right? Let's say, on the other hand, that you have this lane, the Misfortune Taric, and you're up against a Blitzcrank Thresh lane or something like that, or a Brand Draven lane, right? If the second wave crashes and you go up to hit the minions, sure, you might be able to hit the minions, but at the same time, you're going to take a lot of harassment from that lane, right? So in that situation, it would be much more beneficial just to be safer and use your Relic Shield on the first wave as soon as you get into lane. Because when you do leash, the minions when you first get to lane are very, very low. So the very first focus of every ADC is going to be getting those first 3 minions. And during that time frame, you can hit the minions yourself while they're distracted, instead of having to save it for the second wave. Again, though, this is a passive lane. You should be able to save your Relic Shield procs for the second wave. The reason that I say that you should save for the second wave is because it gives you the element of surprise for the level 2 power spike. You were able to get that element of surprise. You were able to get the level 2 power spike, but you make a huge, huge mistake here. All right. So if you look at the minion wave, they still have 2 more minions to take down before they're level 2, right? And the reason that the level 2 power spike is so big is because at that point in the game, you and your ADC combined have 4 abilities and the enemy team has 2 abilities. So you have a massive advantage. You are able to get the element of surprise, you are able to get the level 2 power spike, but then look at your positioning, right? So instead of being all the way back here, I would actually like to see you right here on top of Ashe at this moment, because there's no way that they're getting level 2 in the next few seconds. Let's see, they're going to still auto. They still don't even have level 2. Like, this whole entire time frame, you could have been zoning them, you could have been trading with them, you had a massive advantage, and you didn't use it to the best of your ability, right? So that is something that I already think is something that you need to be working on. It's something that I praise a lot in a lot of my videos. It's something that I think is super important when it comes to playing support, because the level 2 power spike is a major turning point in the game. You can either get a huge health advantage. You can pick up a kill potentially. You can zone off the enemy if you play correctly. There's a lot of advantages that you can get from the level 2 power spike. And you have to remember that even if you don't get a kill, that can still be an advantage. People always like to look at it as if you don't get a kill, you didn't get an advantage. But sometimes just as something as simple as being able to zone off the enemy can be pretty important. Getting farm leads can be pretty important as far as getting yourself ahead. Not a bad trade there. Braum kind of just walked up, ate the E, forced the heal out. That's pretty good. Let's see what else is about to happen, though. Something that this Braum is doing a good job, though, of is playing around the bush. I think playing in and out of the bush is really, really important just because you never really know what somebody's going to do if you don't have vision of them, right? So I'd like to see you either ward the bush or... Actually, yeah, probably just ward the bush here, especially because you guys both have... or let's see, Misfortune has 2 wards, rather. So you guys do have wards to play with. Also, you know that the jungler was just topside, I think, because there were some kills that were picked up. Yeah, the Kayn just picked up 3 assists, so you know he's topside. So you don't need a ward over here right now. You don't need a ward over here right now. So you might as well just put that ward here. And that way you won't allow Braum to have complete control of the bush, and then he won't be able to just poke you with his Q for free. Okay, so, I mean, it's still early. It's only 4.5 minutes in, 5 minutes, but this is exactly how I estimated the lane to play out. I was expecting it to be pretty passive, nothing too crazy going on. A little bit of an engage there. Nothing too crazy.
I have a habit of when I engage, I used to just not know when to get out. So you've seen me do it a couple times. I land my stun and then I either back off and then just take that as a little exchange, or I'll get a couple procs in and back off. I don't try to go all in because what I'm scared of is Braum hitting me with his stun slow and then Ashe hitting me with her Q and just getting the first kill.
I would say that there's probably 3 different forms of trading as Taric. There is just the basic E. Actually, 4 forms of trading, actually. There's just the basic E. You land the E, and then you think, better not engage. Not looking too great for us, right? So you land the E, you walk out. Then there's like the slightly longer form of trading, which is you walk in, you land the E, you auto-attack, smack them twice, then you walk out. Slightly more extended would be you walk in, you E, you auto-attack twice, you Q, you auto-attack twice, then you disengage. And then the 4th one would be just the basic all-in, where you're basically spamming your abilities nonstop, making sure that you're auto-attacking every time in between your abilities. That is going to be the extended trade of Taric, and that's more of an all-in more than anything. So let's see what happens here. I just saw on my map, in the mini-map, you might have not caught it because you were probably paying attention to what's going on in your own lane, but Zed did just head down bottom, and then it looks like there's 2 missing pings here. Right now, you have to ask yourself, do we have time to push in the wave and get out, or do we just get out now, basically, right? But you definitely have vision on the Zed, and you guys are sticking around. So this is a pretty big mistake on your guys' behalf.
Yeah, I just didn't notice it, and then I missed my E. So yeah, I could heal. Did everything I could to get her out.
So this could be a couple things. This could have been a lack of focus. It could have been like just disrespecting the fact of that Zed is kind of strong. It could have been tunneling. It could have been a lot of things, but at the end of the day, this was easily avoidable. We saw Zed head down bottom. We saw him in this area somehow. There was a couple missing pings, so that was easily avoidable. That's going to be 2 kills for them and an execute, so 2-0 for them right there. So roaming is something that I like to emphasize on a lot. I always like to say that you should at least give yourself the opportunity to roam just by heading into the river every time you're coming from base. And maybe you head towards the river and you realize that there's nothing else that you can't accomplish, and then you head back bottom. In this specific situation, though, your mid laner was not there. There was a huge wave stacked up here. Your ADC wasn't down here. So, I mean, there was no harm, no foul in coming down bottom and picking up that wave. But in the future, I am hoping to see you at least be more open-minded to roaming. So this is something that might be an exaggerated statistic, and I don't even remember where I got this reference from. But I remember a long time ago, somebody told me that, or in an interview with Faker or something, he said that he looks at his minimap at least once every 5 seconds. Which sounds like a lot, but the minimap is very important to keep in touch with, right? You need to be able to frequently look at your minimap and figure out what's going on in the game. So that's something that I've noticed twice now, whether that be the Zed roam that you missed. Kayn right here pops up, you know Kayn's in the area, and again, you guys just either didn't notice or didn't expect it to be a problem that you need to react to. and that's why you're going to get engaged on once again. So map awareness already seems like one thing, or one area rather, that you definitely need to improve on. There's been a few other small things that I pointed out, but for the most part, map awareness has been the #1 issue so far. Okay, so I want to rewind this real quick. This is not a huge issue, but something that I do notice a lot of people doing. So right here, this is my issue right there. So you hit this little blue plant, right? This is very common with jungle plants and very common with wards. For example, I've seen so many times on so many occasions, there's a huge fight breaking out, right? Let's say there's a huge fight breaking out in the mid lane, and you are right here, right, making your way towards the mid lane, and then you stumble across a control ward in this bush. 9 times out of 10, instead of going to this fight, people will hit that control ward, right?
Yep.
At that moment in time, that control ward is not important. I know it feels wrong to just leave it sitting there, but more importantly, you want to make it to this fight, right? Okay. You see this little blue jungle plant, and your natural instinct is, oh, I should hit it, right?
Yeah, I wanted to get more vision. You're right. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Instead, you're going to be a little bit too late to this fight, and you just barely miss this, right? You absolutely 100% land this if you don't hit this little jungle plant. So this is not like a huge issue. This isn't something. This isn't a mistake that's going to cost you from getting all the way to platinum or diamond, right? It's a small thing, but sometimes small things do add up, right? And instead of this being a kill, it looks like it's going to be a 1-0 for them, and then we'll see how the rest of this plays out, though. It's going to end up being a 2-0 for them. But who knows? Maybe if you don't hit the blast cone, or not the blast cone, the blue plant rather, though, maybe you're able to get out of there. I would have liked to see you join mid here. Instead, you're going to push down the tower.
Mm-hmm. I think we take the tower, too.
It looks like there's a lot of people here. Okay. And if we rewind here, what I would have done is, as soon as you guys push this wave under tower, I would have rotated. You guys being here is super, super risky, especially because if we look right now where the
there's like currently paused, where anyone's at, I guess.
There's only Ashe on the map, right? So I would have pushed this wave under tower and then immediately rotated. Instead, you guys stick around. Luckily, you get the tower because they didn't react all that much, but you traded for mid tower and 2 kills, so it's actually not that worth in the end, right? So I definitely think that heading mid there would have been the better option. Okay, so like I mentioned, it does look like there's a team fight coming out, and there's going to be a lot of team fights coming up throughout the rest of the game, so now is a good time to answer the other 2 questions that I mentioned at the very beginning. What is your role on the team, and what is your team's win condition? Fiora, I think, is a very strong split-pushing champion, so that might be one of your win conditions. She also has a 4-kill advantage on Riven, so I think having her split would definitely be a good option. Garen is 050, so him split pushing is not a good idea whatsoever. So at this point, I think that your win condition is try to get to late game, because you do have a lot of late game team fighters, and then do a 1-4 layout with Fiora in the top lane or bot lane split pushing, and then U4 in the middle. That's going to be your team's win condition. As for your role on the team, your role on the team is to deny Kayn and deny Riven and deny Zed from assassinating your carries. And that can be difficult because you can only heal and shield for so much. You only have 1 stun, and that's only if you are able to land it. And your ultimate does have a bit of a delay before it is cast. So it will be difficult, especially with a 12 kill Zed, to be able to get that ultimate proc before you or before he's able to kill your carries, but that is ideally what you want to be aiming for, and we'll see as these team fights start playing out if that's able, or if that's what you're able to do rather. Okay, so this is a mistake that I see a lot of players doing with champions that have really valuable ultimates. They always think that they have to wait for the perfect moment to use it, right? But at the end of the day, it's better to at least use it than die not using it at the perfect moment, right? And I think that's what your problem is here, is you keep looking, okay, at this moment, it's just Braum and Zed's over here, so not a great time to proc it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see when you probably should have procced it, though.
Right here.
Actually, yeah, right around here. Anytime now would have been good.
I saw their health bars and how many, and we had like a 4v3 advantage, and I thought maybe, since I didn't realize he was coming back from top, of our lane, I was like, oh, we have this. I don't have to use my ult just yet. I can save it. And then, yeah, we didn't.
I feel like I say this a million times, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
Even if you use your ult there and it doesn't have like a super great usage, chances are it's going to be back up by the time you have your next team fight, right? I mean, if we look here, there's not another fight that goes on for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, right? So even if you use your ultimate there and it wasn't used to the best of its ability, it's going to be up again anyways, right? So make sure you're always getting those ultimates out before you do die. Okay, so this trade is somewhat close, but I'm going to pause before it even plays out all the way, because I do want to say one thing here. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I see in all low ranks. Basically, in lower elos, people fight for no reason. And basically what I mean is, see this fight here where you guys are fighting? If this fight... Okay, so technically, the whole purpose for fighting should be, if we win this fight, we win this objective. Yes. Right? That should be the goal. Right here, if you win this fight, what do you get? An Ocean Dragon. So it doesn't really pay off all that much. Even then, you guys are so far behind in this game that it's not worth to fight over an Ocean Dragon. Right? If anything, I think you guys should be fighting right here under your tower. I wouldn't even fight for Rift Herald at this point because you guys are so far behind. So the only fight that you guys should be going for is this right here. And that should be in the sense that, okay, if we are able to win this fight, we got to keep our tower. And for them, it would be, if we win this fight, we get their tower, right? There always should be a reason for fighting. Right here, in this river fight, you guys are fighting, both teams actually, for no reason. Maybe possibly an Ocean Dragon, but that's not worth much. So again, make sure that when you are fighting, and it's hard to always fight for a reason because you do have to rely on 4 other players also being on the same page, but try at least your best to fight for a reason.
As a support, I want to ask you, how do I put myself in a position where I'm not a part of those no reason fights? Because when I see my team engaging in that kind of behavior, the first thing I think of is I have to get there, because you're right, we're so far behind, there's no way they're going to sustain that. So in that case, should I just let it go, or do I have to fight for no reason as well just because they're already engaged?
I think sometimes typing is the best way to efficiently communicate. Unfortunately, League does not have comms, right? And it sucks. Because it would be much easier right here to say, hey guys, we're behind 10,000 gold. Let's just try to turtle under our tower, wait for them to hopefully mess up or overextend, and then we'll peel, we'll hit the front line, we'll try to peel off the Zed and everything, right? That'll be our win condition. But typing all of that would be a nightmare, right? Yeah. There's no way to efficiently communicate with your team that you don't need to contest over this Ocean Dragon down 10,000 gold. So instead, you could just say something like, give Ocean, or something like that. Maybe that gets the message across. It's not nearly as elaborate as everything I was saying earlier, but that might help. Sometimes pinging, just some danger pings and stuff like that, that can help. There's not always a guaranteed way to get your team to do what you think is best, but typing short things and pinging can be productive. I would like to say, though, that you don't want to be typing full paragraphs, right? Something as simple as give Ocean, right? 2 words. Don't say, hey guys, I really think that we should give this Ocean Dragon because we are down 10,000 gold and I don't think that we will win this fight. And even if we do win this fight, I don't think that we'll be benefiting all that much from it, right? Not necessary. Not necessary. Keep it short and simple, and try to get to the point, and maybe that helps out. This right here is a little risky, just because, again, you have vision on nobody right now, right? You guys are looking for a pick on the Kayn, but you have no idea where anybody else is, and you guys don't have crazy good vision. So you guys could easily be collapsed on here, and that would probably result in a tower or a rift, especially because you have Garen mid and Misfortune bot. Let's see, though. Maybe you guys are able to get this pick unharmed. Okay, Zed just showed up bottom.
I think we actually do get it.
All right, cool. So you guys do get the pick there, luckily enough. I think this might have been like a desperation pick just because you guys are trying to get back into the game, so I can't really blame you all too much. Yeah, that was a pretty risky play to go for.
Our jungle was actually complaining in chat. He's like, I can't farm, I can't get ahead. So he was like, he was overextending anywhere he could try to farm, so I think that's why we went to support him. But yeah, I didn't notice this during the game, but what you're pointing out about the lack of people on the map. I always look for people on the map, but I guess I've never thought like there's no one on the map, so maybe we shouldn't be out.
You always have to be prepared for the unexpected, right? Yeah. Always ask yourself, okay, I could do this play, but what happens if so-and-so shows up, right? How does that going to backfire, right? You could easily look at it and say, okay, there's an ADC that has 50% HP under tower, and we have 3 of us in the area. We could dive him, but you don't have vision on everybody on the map. So ask yourself the question, okay, we could dive him, but what happens if their mid laner and jungler come down? Or what happens if their support walks back to lane? Or what happens if they have a ward back here and they TP behind us, right? Then you're looking at a big issue, right? So ask yourself, always keep in mind that people may show up and it may turn into a problem. Okay, so one thing that I always say is it's not worth saving your teammates, right?
Yeah.
If it puts yourself in a bad situation. So if I were to rewind this...
I saw her there by herself. She TP'd over there, and I immediately was like, oh, God, no.
So I'm pausing this right here to show you that you have a dead mid laner. You have your jungler and ADC all the way back here, right? You are running all the way across the map to get to this Fiora and hoping of saving her. Maybe it works out just because of how fed she is, but if this were me, I would not have come to this situation. Let's see how it plays out, though, because maybe you guys are able to make some miraculous play.
Yeah, I immediately hit my ult because Zed was just gonna wreck us.
I think you could have used your ult like half a second earlier.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's watch it again. But again, as we did go on to see, you guys, this did not play out in your favor, right? So I would not have gone for this. Let's see, though. Double stun. Good. Boom. Right here. I would have popped it like a half a second earlier. You already know that Fiora's goal is to go all in here, right? And then as soon as Zed showed up on the screen, I would have popped it.
Okay.
It's not necessarily late, but it wasn't the perfect timing.
I try to wait for the enemy to make a move. I try to say, okay, now he's gonna make a move, and I try to.
Yeah.
I guess I should do it when I see them in range.
I mean that is kind of a good mindset, right? Because if the enemy makes zero move at all and you proc your ulti, they're just gonna back up, right? So you do kind of want to wait for them to use a move or to make some kind of play, typically. But in this situation, you should have been able to recognize that Fiora's intention was to go in, right? She did not look like she was going out whatsoever. So having that ulti on her as early as possible would have been nice. And then again, Zed with 20 plus kills on him, 27 kills now, should be able to one-shot her or get her down pretty low. So as soon as he pops up on the screen, I would have definitely popped that.
Okay.
Again, not necessarily late, but not perfect timing.
Oh, yeah, I should have been there anyway, like you said.
Yeah, good point.
That's probably one of my top 3 habits I need to break is like crossing oceans to save people for a puddle.
Absolutely. Good ulti there. Very good ulti.
Turns around for us. We were able to drive down lane, I think, after this.
Very good ulti right there. Notice how the second that your ult went off, their only option there was to just run the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right? Because you timed your ulti so well, they had no choice but to run the other way. And this is a huge turning point right here. So Fiora has definitely carried you guys to the 31-minute point, but that was a really good ultimate by you. Also a good stun as well. This is the problem that I see here. This is basically you being overeager, okay? So if you look here, Sejuani and Garen are mid. I don't know why they're mid, but they're mid, right? Ashe is top side, or in the top lane. And then if you also pause it here, this Baron is at 9,903 HP, right? You don't need to go in right here, right? I don't think you should wait for the very last second. But when it comes to taking Baron, what I ideally think is most ideal is waiting for the Baron to get a little bit lower, right? Because Baron does a good amount of damage, right? So if you let the Baron chunk them down, then you stand a much better chance when you do go in. So a combination of you going in too early because your teammates aren't here and because Baron is so high HP is a mistake. Also, you're Taric, you're not Leona, you're not an Alistar, you aren't necessarily an engaged champion. So popping your ulti here and just running in with the E, not the best idea. So definitely a little bit of a misplay on your behalf. Luckily, your team is able to pick up a few kills, so this isn't like a super terrible fight. You guys are able to kind of hang in there a little bit longer. And then a few minutes later, as we fast forward, there should be another Baron fight. And let's see how this one handles. Ashe is bottom, so I would just start this immediately. 35 minutes into a game with Ashe just showing bottom, I would have just started Baron and then looked to turn. Instead, Sejuani engages. Ulti. I do think that you should have used your ult here. It doesn't look like it was needed, but again, I would think that it was necessary. Also, Riven is AFK, as I'm just now noticing. So maybe that's why you guys were able to win this game.
Yeah, right after that fight, they said report Riven.
Okay, so again, right here, I'm seeing a big mistake. So momentum is very crucial in League of Legends. Momentum helps win games, right? So the other team was winning for the majority of the game. You guys got like a good team fight or something, which then brought the momentum on your side. Then you guys kind of threw at Baron, which gave the momentum back to them. You were able to bounce back. You guys get Baron yourself. Momentum's back with you, right? See how it's back and forth?
Yes.
But you want to keep momentum on your side. Momentum kills the spirits of your enemies. And right here, you guys have Baron. You made the mistake of not all of you guys going straight to Elder, which kind of sucks. But after they get Elder, the damage is done, and in order to keep the momentum going, you guys should have just grouped with Baron, right? But Sejuani's in the top side, and the Baron or Elder is just now taken, and you guys are in this area for no reason really, and it's going to cost you guys your life. It seems like it. So yeah, you guys are kind of just giving the momentum back to them a little bit. It might play out in your favor, just because it's 4v5 really. But definitely a mistake there that could have cost you guys quite a bit, especially at the 37-minute mark. That was a bit of a throw. So a huge shutdown on Zed. You guys should just be running it down mid right now. I'd expect you to end off of that pick.
Yep. That's what happened.
That's kind of the same mistake that we saw earlier when I was talking about hitting the plant when you should be running towards a fight, or hitting a ward when you should be running towards a fight. Sejuani was trying to engage, and it kind of looked like a failed engage. But even if she was trying to engage, I think it's much more beneficial for you right there to run up rather than using your rogue shield procs on the minions. Okay, 3v5. Zed's down for another 20 seconds. Let's see what you guys got. Good ulti timing there. Maybe slightly late,
yeah.
But I do think it was pretty good for the most part. And it wasn't even so much that the ulti timing was late. I would say the bigger problem was your positioning after you did proc the ult. You kind of just walked forward, right? You can proc the ult and hang out in the back line and still be effective. So ult timing was good. The positioning was a little subpar.
What would be your biggest advice for me to really focus on that would be a good start for me to climb a little better?
For Taric specifically?
Yeah. Or even Soraka, because I mean, any support champion, what do you see in my play style that you say would probably help me climb a lot better if I were to work on that directly?
Well, the fact that you play a lot of Soraka and Taric tells me that your playstyle is very peel-oriented. You like playing around teammates, which kind of sucks for solo queue, right? Having to depend on teammates, your playstyle depending on teammates.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, or the biggest point that I can give you, something that I've already mentioned and something that you already mentioned, is even when you are playing around your teammates, at some points, you can't play around them, right? Whether that be because you have an ADC that is feeding or just falling behind. At that point in the game, you kind of want to change your playstyle to play around other laners. For example, in that last game, your ADC wasn't doing too hot. You weren't doing too hot either. But you had a really fed Fiora, right? So your playstyle should have adapted to playing all around Fiora, helping Fiora make plays, keeping Fiora alive, stuff like that.
Okay.
Another thing is not setting yourself to the standard of always having to keep your allies alive. As we saw, even if you are playing around Fiora, you shouldn't have made that run all the way across the map to try to help her in the top lane, right? So those would be the two things that kind of are bunched together as far as what you need to be looking out for when it comes to saving teammates, because that is something that you do embody in your playstyle. Your playstyle is very much about playing around your teammates, but you do have to keep those two things in mind in order to see more success, because if you are doing those things incorrectly, you will be throwing a lot of games. That game itself had quite a bit of momentum shifts and some throws, and I think if it wasn't a 4v5 at the end, that you guys probably would have lost that one.
All right, great advice, man. Thanks.